Welcome to the Leaders in Payments podcast, where we talk to C-level leaders from across the payments landscape. We'll be discussing the products and services that impact the payment space today, as well as trends and predictions for the future of payments. We will also hear stories from our guests about their journeys to the top.
We have to figure out what they're selling and what they're saying. The other part is, and this is very specific to CBD and hemp, is that we just have to make sure that the folks who are the owners of these businesses aren't also owners of a marijuana-related business, an MRB, and are commingling funds. So there are several layers there, and the team at the bank is incredibly well-versed in this.
That was Tom Lineen, the CEO of Westtown Payments, and he is our special guest this week. This is episode 51 of the Leaders in Payments podcast, and I'm your host, Greg Myers. And hey, before we get started, if you happen to office in Houston, Austin, or North Texas, check out Fuse Workspace, where their mission is to help others do more. Check them out at fuseworkspace.com. Okay, back to the show. Tom was born in Brooklyn, New York, grew up in New Jersey, went to North Carolina State in Raleigh, has lived in multiple cities, including LA, Charlotte, Tampa, New York City, and now Park Cities, Utah. Tom is the CEO of Westtown Payments, which is a joint venture with Westtown Bank and Trust. The bank has its roots in agriculture, and as there's a shift from tobacco to hemp, the bank is there to help these merchants. So naturally, hemp and CBD businesses are big opportunities for the bank from a deposit and treasury services perspective. Westtown Payments now allows the bank to offer merchant services to these hemp and CBD businesses, as well as others in the bank's portfolio. The bank takes a compliance-first approach to board these merchants, and Tom explains some of the unique compliance factors in this space. This is a growing and interesting industry and is expected to reach $26.6 billion by 2025. This is a great episode about a market we haven't talked a whole lot about, so let's get started. Hi, Tom. Thank you for being here, and welcome to the Leaders in Payments podcast.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
Absolutely. So let's dive right in. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself, maybe where you grew up, where you went to school, where you currently live, a few things like that.
Sure. So I was born in Brooklyn, New York, grew up in New Jersey, went to North Carolina State University in Raleigh, and after college, bounced back and forth between a couple cities, LA, Charlotte, Tampa, Charlotte, ultimately getting to Utah through the opportunity with AuthorizeNet, and then moving back east to New York City to take an opportunity to synergy data, and then back out to Park City, Utah, where we thought we'd be here for 1 year. And we've been here now for 13 years.
Isn't that the way it always works?
Oh my gosh, yes.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about Westtown Payments. And I know there's a story behind it and related to the bank. So I think it's going to be interesting for our audience to kind of hear that background. So tell us what Westtown Bank does and how Westtown Payments plays into that.
Absolutely. So Westtown Payments, is an ISO by heart, but we're also a direct bank acquirer through the joint venture with Westtown Bank and Trust. And matter of fact, actually, today is our official launch. So December 1st, 2020, we're launching into market. But what actually, differentiates us, or what we think is our real value to the market, is first, we're a direct bank acquirer. So there are no middlemen. We have direct licensing with Visa, MasterCard, Amex, and Discover. But the big part here is the bank itself. The bank is, being a North Carolina bank, they have their roots in agriculture. So it's only natural that as the agricultural market in North Carolina shifts from tobacco and other products to hemp, the bank is there to bank them. And so hemp and CBD are big market opportunities for the bank from a depository perspective, as well as other treasury management or cash management services. But what we're doing is now we're adding another product, which is merchant services, to that bank's arsenal of products. And so we are technically processing payments for the hemp and CBD industry. And just to clarify, that's not marijuana. This is, 0.3% or below THC content. And so, which is now, since 2018, legal to bank and provide financial services through the Farm Act.
So As part of the bank, do you sell through their channels to their existing merchants and to new non-bank merchants?
Great question. So as we decided to launch, we knew we had to service our backyard first. So the current bank customers, DDA customers, other services that are in the hemp CBD space, as well as general businesses, because the bank is not just specific to hemp CBD. They provide services to a variety of businesses. And so merchant services, we will be launching into all of the bank's customers. But yes, the CBD hemp space, we're servicing the bank's customers first. What's also happening in tandem is there are a series of companies that are supporting us through either vendor relationships or others that are bringing their customers to us, to the bank. So our process today is we are making sure the merchants in the hemp and CBD space are compliant through the various rules that are in place. And then once they pass our hemp compliance program, we are then putting them into the commercial team to set up a DDA relationship or a depository account. And then they're able to take advantage of all the services, which would be wire transfer services, ACH, online banking, and then, of course, merchant services.
Okay. And I would assume, just from what I've read, that the hemp and CBD market it's been kind of up and down, a lot of regulations, a lot of you can do this, you can't do that. What has your experience been trying to navigate that whole process?
Tell you, Greg, it's been painful is the easiest way to say it. So there's been a couple banks that have entered the market and fairly quickly left a wake of destruction in their path. And the fact is that they came at it as payment people or payment institutions, and they could be driven by the ISO that sits out in front of the bank, or it was a direct bank acquiring. But either way, they didn't look at it from a compliance first standpoint. And so that was a big part of why I felt very comfortable partnering with Westtown Bank and Trust, is that they are compliance first. They are a bank that started in the early 1900s. So they're not new to the game. And they looked at this industry and thought, well, there's a law on the books. There's actually several laws. So there's the Farm Act of 2014. There's an Omnibus Act that cleared up some confusion there. And then ultimately the Farm Act of 2018. So between those pieces of legislature, they have gained a comfortable footing in what is and what is not allowable. And, not only are they compliance heavy up front, but there's an ongoing compliance that needs to be done. And what we've seen is a lot of the banks weren't prepared for that, or they just didn't take that seriously. And that's always a problem. And there's even a couple of PayFacs now in the market who have publicly stated that, the compliance is on the merchant and they're not going to focus on that. And I find that to be, a recipe for disaster. And so Westtown Bank and Trust is definitely approaching this correctly by being compliance first. The KYC AML process is fairly detailed and arduous, but once the merchant makes it through that, then they're treated like any other bank customer, and we provide the entire suite of services. So I think they know that if they're willing to make the effort to go through that process to get to the other side, they now have a really strong foundation with which they can operate their business with a financial partner that understands their business, understands the industry. I think previously that wasn't the case. I think a lot of banks just saw it as an opportunity to create revenue and didn't realize what that entailed and frankly got sideways.
Okay. And are there currently other solutions on the market, or are you guys like one of the only, one of the first, or how does the market look for this industry?
Sure. There are definitely other banks. I mentioned PayFacs who are dipping their toe or getting involved. Where we're differentiating ourselves from them is that they provide either a merchant account or DDA services, but rarely are they providing both. And they're certainly not providing them in a workflow-like solution where you start on A, end on Z, and now you have your entire suite of solutions at your beck and call. And because of that, I look at that and think, wait a second. So you're willing to open a merchant account, but you're not willing to open a DDA account, which in my mind is a much deeper relationship. And so they create an environment where they're they're easily able to shut it down and run out the back door. Whereas we're saying, no, we're here for the long term, and we really want to be the bank to the hemp CBD industry. We're not going to be the bank to everybody, of course, but the ones who are willing to do it correctly, we're certainly going to be their partner for a very long time. And frankly, the industry is truly nascent. I mean, all the predictions talk about by 2025, you're going to have a $25 billion industry. Well, we're in 2020, about to be 2021. And unless other banks embrace this industry and take the steps that we have, there's very little chance that there's going to be enough financial bandwidth to support a growth from, let's call it, 3 to 5 billion to 25 billion in 4 years. So other banks are most likely going to jump in. We encourage it, frankly, but we also want to warn them that it's not super easy. This is not just simple e-commerce merchant services or retail merchant services. There's a high level of compliance that goes along with supporting this industry.
Yeah, and you mentioned something there I wanted to talk about is the retail versus e-commerce. Where do you see that mixture of the two? Kind of, is it more e-commerce, more retail? How does that look?
Well, I think certainly in this environment today, e-commerce is more welcome. Even if there's a retail component with a curbside pickup or wallet-based transaction, I think those are coming more so, now in this moment than ever before. There's a real shift to that. But, certainly the retail environment is there, but e-commerce is definitely what we're seeing as being, the big catalyst. Certainly in this time, e-commerce just feels more comfortable. And, I think that makes sense. But long term, I don't doubt that retail has a place and it will continue to always have that place, but it's going to look different. Contactless or wallet-based solutions will reign. Cash, is not welcome. And that obviously creates a lot of challenges for the cannabis or marijuana industry, but we don't necessarily have those same challenges because we can and do provide electronic-based solutions. And, I don't doubt that as we evolve and as the merchants evolve and the industry evolves, we're going to have to focus more on like an omni-commerce solution where you do have a single operator who operates a retail outlet. Maybe they have a mobile payment need, certainly a wallet-based or contactless-based solution. And then, of course, e-commerce, shopping cart, and and all the things that go along with that, loyalty-based payments, rewards programs, these kind of things just are naturally going to flow. And I don't think it's going to take that long for these things to become more mainstream, especially as the market increases, because, the demand will grow and the market will meet it.
Sure. So I wanted to circle back on the concept of compliance because it seems to be very important to, one, the bank, and two, the market and as a whole. Are there any things that you can share about sort of how compliance for this space is different than, say, your typical merchant?
So that's the interesting part. I don't think it's incredibly different. If you think about, let's take nutraceuticals, for example. So nutraceuticals have been around, being sold online in stores, major chains throughout the U.S. for many years. I mean, Utah is a huge nutraceutical mecca. But in that, the FTC and the FDA have stepped into that realm and have raised their hand and said, no, you can't make those claims. And, there's even stories of, I think it was the Attorney General in New York who went to a GNC and literally just went down the aisle and pulled off random bottles and tested what was in the bottles. And it was a very high percentage that had basically nothing, no active ingredient that was listed on the label. So when you look at that, you just really, what's occurring there is the same exact thing is happening here. They're just applying it to something that has a more nefarious cousin in the marijuana plant. And so with CBD and hemp, the same rules apply. One, it's what are they saying and what are they selling? What are they saying is the claims they're making on their website. Are they saying that this CBD product can cure cancer or COVID? Well, the fact is, no, it can't. And any idiot who makes that claim really does deserve to get, all the attention they're getting from those three-letter agencies. The other part is what is in the bottle. And what we require all of our customers to do is have every product that has CBD or hemp in it tested. And there's a report that comes out. It's generally called a COA. And that COA tells you what's in that bottle. And as long as that merchant can prove that this is the COA or the test that was done on that ingredient, and they are, within limits of the law, 0.3% THC or lower, then, that's an acceptable product for this market. And that's our job. And that's what compliance, in my mind, that's one level of compliance. And that is we have to figure out what they're selling and what they're saying. The other part is, and this is very specific to CBD and hemp, is that we just have to make sure that the folks who are the owners of these businesses aren't also owners of a marijuana-related business, an MRB, and are commingling funds. So there's several layers there, and the team at the bank is incredibly well-versed in this, very adroit at getting to the bottom of things. And, they've uncovered, merchants who have these issues, and we're just not able to work with them. But if the merchants are, void of these issues, then we can work with them. And so I'm simplifying compliance tremendously, but that really is the core of it. And then it's ongoing, right? You don't just say, okay, you're approved and let them go. We certainly know from e-commerce days of past, that's a bad formula. So we have to keep ongoing compliance. And that just goes back to, what are they selling and what are they saying? And if they, get too aggressive in their marketing, okay, well, sometimes it's an innocent mistake. Other times it's incredibly intentional, and we have to deal with that. And, also if they add products that we're not aware of, well, that's a problem too. And so we just have to stay on top of our customers. And frankly, it's expensive, but luckily this is a business that has enough margin in it, both for the merchant and us, that we can do what is needed to support them, and they can pay that expense in order to have a, legitimate tier 1 direct banking relationship.
Okay. So we talked about compliance and how you feel that differentiates you. And then obviously the market that you're serving is different than a lot of the typical payments companies. So is there anything else that differentiates your company from the competitors that you do see out there today?
Yeah, I would say that the other thing is that we're doing it out in the daylight. We're literally out front having the discussions with the examiners of the bank early and often, with anyone who wants to talk to us about it, because we believe if this industry is going to have a foundation of growth, you have to be very, very transparent. To take a step further, the bank even has trademarked the phrase hemp banks here. And so I don't think you can get any farther out front than that. But that would be the other thing. We're not one foot in here. We're focused on the future, we're focused on growth. That being said, this is not the only industry or the only vertical that Westtown Payments and Westtown Bank and Trust pursue. We have actually several other verticals that we're pursuing, either because we have expertise on the team or because there's an opportunity locally or in the areas that the bank serves. So the bank is in North Carolina and Illinois. It's actually an Illinois charter bank, state chartered bank. And so, we're taking advantage of where our strong suits are. We're definitely not going out there and being everything to everyone. We're also focused on other compliance-driven verticals, because compliance is compliance. The rules change a little bit, certainly. But if you have a compliance mandate, there are a lot of industries out there that are, let's view it as higher risk, but not in the same sense or terms as high risk as other people might define them. They're just high compliance. And so when we have that skill set, we're going to extend it to other industries too.
Right. So you mentioned some of the predictions on how much this industry might grow, the hemp and CBD part. What do you see the future? I mean, where is it heading in, say, the next 2 to 3 years? What's going to be new and different that's going to go on to help support that growth?
Absolutely. So I'd say in general, the world, not just our industry, so this is truly in general, is moving to a contactless, wallet-based world or e-commerce. And there's no doubt why. COVID has pushed a lot of these initiatives that have languished for many years to the forefront. They're on your phone. Apple Pay is on your phone. Google Pay, I think it's called GPay now, is on your phone. I mean, it's been there. Now, whether you used it or not before, That's different. But I believe, so that's now, right? That's now, that's for the next 2 years, maybe 5 years. Long term, and getting specific to CBD and hemp, I go back to the fact that I don't think Westtown Bank and Trust is going to be the only bank in this space, not for long, just because there's a lot of influences that are occurring. There's a lot of legislation that's coming down the pipe. It will become a more attractive market to more banks, which is fine because we know, even if we were 10 times larger, 100 times larger, we couldn't support the entire industry, and we don't want to. So that is definitely going to come sooner than later. Those banks, though, will have to focus on compliance first. They'll have to go out and find subject matter experts, not just payment subject matter experts, but compliance driven, maybe infrastructure. They certainly have to add to the roster, and some of them aren't prepared to do that. And then embrace technology. We leverage a lot of technology in what we do day to day from a compliance perspective, risk management, account boarding. Banks, especially smaller ones, community banks, historically, have not embraced technology. So they'll have to do that. I'm sure folks will do that. And so we'll see a lot more entrance in the market. I do also believe the physical card, the card in your wallet, that's gone. It's not going to last long. Just like cash, folks don't want to handle your credit card. And I unfortunately, but also inevitably, retail is going to continue to scale down. I don't think it'll ever fully go away. The fact that I need a gift for my wife for some event tonight and I got to run out and get it, that's always going to be there. Amazon is not going to get to deliver to Park City, Utah in 1 hour. So I do think retail will still have a place. It's just going to, again, continue to scale down. But e-commerce, home delivery is just going to continue to explode. And I think the gig economy that was the Uber, empowering Uber and some of these other gig economy environments is now going to delivery. It's happening now. I see folks show up at my doorstep who are not wearing a UPS or FedEx outfit or delivering my packages for Amazon. So it's occurring and it will continue to evolve even past the pandemic or whatever that looks like. This will continue.
Yeah, I agree with you there. So, Tom, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about you. Tell us about your journey to your role there as the CEO at Westtown Payments.
Okay. So I'm going to go a little further back to bring us up to today. So back in 1998, I was selling chemical metering pumps throughout the southeast of the U.S., and I really realized that is not a long-term lifestyle. 60,000 miles driving around the southeast every year was grinding. And so I thought about it and I realized that with e-commerce coming on, the internet and what that was, that the lowest common denominator was going to be payments. Sure, there are going to be website design companies and all these other picks and shovel type industries popping up around the internet. But if you're not accepting payments, then you're just a brochure, and a brochure site won't last terribly too long. So in that, mindset, I was literally at a car wash trade show in the Grand Ole Opry in Tennessee, and I met the gentleman in the booth across from me. His name was Sloan Bouchevet. And amongst other things, he was a reseller for a company called AuthorizeNet in Utah. And he explained to me what he was doing and how he was an early reseller. And I was hooked at the moment go. I was like, that's exactly where this world's going to go. And shortly thereafter, he joined AuthorizeNet. And I spent the next 2 years working my butt off to join AuthorizeNet as well. And mind you, this is when AuthorizeNet was a 29-person company, maybe 25 people in Provo, Utah, before anyone really knew who they were outside of the payment world. And so fast forward from there, I've had the good fortune of meeting some wonderful people like Sloan who've pushed me forward in this industry. Because as you know, there is no MBA program for payments. You don't get a PhD in payments. You live it. You have to be in it, unfortunately or fortunately. But the people I've met, I've been fortunate enough to start companies, been able to sell them, exit them, merge them into other companies. And so as I was a couple of years now looking at the CBD hemp industry, I attempted to bring two banks, believe it or not, into this space. and both for different reasons decided not to continue in the 11th hour. So I was a little, we'll call it jaded on the concept of being able to get, find a bank that would see the vision that I see in this new market. And I was introduced to Westtown Bank and Trust by a friend who was also an agent of mine in March of 2020. So literally at the beginning of this pandemic. And he explained to me what they do and what they're, as far as being a hemp-focused bank, but they had no payment experience. They have never, acquired a single transaction. And so from that day in early March to literally today, we met virtually, because we've actually never physically met, put together a business plan, created this division of the bank, Westtown Payments, and went and ran like heck at getting our Discover, Amex, Visa, MasterCard license, a relationship with TSYS, all of it set up, spun up, and live before the retail freeze. And I guess, truth be told, I gave myself the title of CEO. But, it's been something I've been working on now for 3 years, almost 3 years now, to take a bank and bring them into this space and, now take it to the next level.
Fascinating journey. So what are some things you're passionate about? So maybe one thing that's work related and maybe one non-work related thing.
I'm passionate about payments, which is not the sexiest thing, though lately it's become much more popular. And frankly, you have to be, because if you're not passionate about what you do day in, day out, you spend 5/7 of your life working. And so if you're not passionate, I really caution anyone to really rethink what they're doing, because that's not a good way to spend your life. And in that, and this is still business, but it will transition to personal, I'm also passionate about people. Because no matter how much technology or how great your technology is, without really good people in your business, you may not fail, but you will not succeed at the same level. If you have really great people, and these are, passionate people who want for the customers to succeed, for the business to succeed, then you will have success. But even more important, I think about my career, without the people, my network, my friends through this 20 plus years in this industry, without their support, their mentorship, their introductions. I mean, the reason you and I are talking, we were introduced by a mutual friend, Frank. So I think about that. And I think if you are not passionate about the people that you surround yourself with and improving them, you probably will not succeed. Certainly not to the level you should be able to. And, I even take that a step further, and this is more personal. Like, I'm very passionate about my wife and my family. And especially now with the pandemic, because you really have seen, and I'm sure you've seen this too, where, relationships have failed and they're, divorcing, and where, people are definitely not in their best mental place. And so having her in my life has been, the key, honestly, the key to everything. They say, 90% of happiness is derived by who you marry, by your spouse. I'd say in my case, it's a couple percent points higher. And so, I think it's people who are in your life, and, to really, and I even think incredibly, like this situation I'm in now, how fortunate I am. If it wasn't for Eric, Melissa, and Alex, really believing in what we could do here at Westtown Payments. And then frankly, the people we've hired who've said, I'll follow you. Let's do this crazy idea. David, Jessica, Jason, Brett, Kat. I mean, there's a lot of trust that they've put in me, in the bank. I don't take that lightly. So it's really the people that I'm passionate about.
Absolutely. So you've been in the industry for, like you mentioned, around 20 years. And when I started 15 years ago, I just sort of fell into the industry, right? It wasn't like, hey, I was looking to get into it. But today it's a little different. I think the payments industry, fintech, has gotten a lot of press. A lot of money's been invested into the industry. And a lot of people starting careers and wanting to actually get into the industry. So what would your advice be to someone, say, coming right out of college, looking at fintech, looking at payments? What advice would you give them to be successful in this industry?
So I would say there's two pieces of advice. One is on a personal level, and one might be more on a business level. On a personal level, I would tell them, especially folks who are younger, maybe single, newly married, take chances, chase opportunities, even if they're not in the town you live in. I think that is the greatest opportunity for growth, is to just take that leap of faith and chase something. It'll give you incredible confidence as you go on in life. The other thing I would do is I would also suggest be humble. It's fair to say that early in my career, I was not humble. And I learned some lessons, some very valuable lessons. And I've taken those with me through the rest of my career, which is, frankly, if there are anything else to tell you, is make mistakes early. They're really easy to overcome early. But, obviously now, like in my position, I have a wife, 3 kids, mortgage, a lot of responsibility. And so I have to weigh my decisions on those factors. The other thing I would say from a business perspective, when you think about yourself and how you fit into any organization, especially in payments, if you can become a subject matter expert in a certain vertical. We hired a gentleman who has 18 years experience in the parking payments vertical. And this guy knows everybody, and it's not an incredibly sexy vertical, but he is literally incredibly well liked and respected. Easy decision for us to hire him and bring him on and give him resources because he has a niche. And then I would also suggest learning a skill, a high level skill, whether it be accounting, software developer, or coder, is so incredibly valuable in this day and age, especially as payments becomes much more integrated, APIs and other things are leveraged. The other area which is growing and frankly is going to be a problem if it isn't met head on is fraud and risk management. So if you have that ability to learn those specific areas and become subject matter experts, you will always have an opportunity in the payment industry. Frankly, it's one of the things that I wish I had learned to do is to write code. And so I'm aggressively encouraging my 6th grade daughter to be a software developer, and she apparently is better than I am already, because it is the future. It's now, but it's certainly the future. And payments, if you have those skills, you are incredibly invaluable. But most importantly, above all that, is develop your network of mentors, of folks that you're mentoring, of friends in this industry, because this is an incredibly dynamic industry. I just read today of another company acquiring a major ISO in the space. There are going to be new hires. There are going to be people who get laid off out of just that transaction. This is a very fluid industry. Get to know as many people as you can, genuinely befriend as many as you can, help whoever you can, because it may not come back to you tomorrow, but it will definitely come back to you at some point. And it's just fun to get to know people. One other little piece of advice I would do is when we do get back to trade show life and being able to go to conferences, I would encourage people, go to the bar, go to the reception and get out of your comfort zone, get off the wall and meet people. If you're fortunate enough to have a corporate credit card, buy somebody a drink, because you're going to make great friends in this industry if you just get out there and really put yourself out there, and it will pay you back. My entire career has been built on the relationships I have developed, and I, plan on paying that back and paying it forward, because it's just been good policy for me to this point.
Okay. Well, Tom, we've covered a lot of ground already. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Greg, I just appreciate the opportunity to talk about basically our startup, right, at Westtown Payments. You have had some really significant players and companies in this industry on your podcast. And so I'm very humbled by the opportunity to be here and talk about Westtown Payments and Westtown Bank and Trust. And so I hope you and your family have a wonderful holiday season and a much better 2021 than 2020.
Well, Tom, thanks so much for being on the show. I know your time's very valuable, so I really appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you, Greg.
All right. And I wish the best to you and your family as well. And to all you listeners out there, I thank you for your time as well. And until the next story.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Leaders in Payments podcast. Make sure you visit our website at leadersinpayments.com, where you can subscribe to the show and where you'll find our show notes. If you enjoyed listening, please share on your social channels as well.